the Motorbike Rider digital magazine, bringing you video features, video tours and video reviews.
Hi, Kevin from Motorbike Rider magazine and Motorbike TV. I'm here today with Sam Manicom, who wrote this book that we are currently reviewing. And as the title suggests, and in fact, as some people have already mentioned, having seen the front cover, that his penis was out, has created quite a buzz. so much so that somebody asked for their title to be moved off the front page to somewhere else because it was quite blending in with what I was trying to say about them as well. But I want to go back, if I may, Sam, to that time before going on this journey that you'd had enough at work and you thought to yourself, I just need an adventure. What was that time like?
It was actually quite a weird time, Kevin. Do you know, I've spent an awful lot of my life travelling. I've travelled by bicycle and sail and hitchhiked and all sorts of other things. And at the end of the last big trip, I decided that actually perhaps I ought to grow up and do what you're supposed to do in life and get a mortgage and a career and chase the pot of gold that you're supposed to have for retirement and all of those sorts of things, the proper way of living. And that's what I've done. And I'll never forget the round of interviews. I applied for 26 different jobs and didn't have replies from any of them except for one. And this one, well, of course, I went for it.
Yeah.
And I rocked up to the interview 20 minutes early, as you do, but the person who was there before me hadn't turned up. So the area manager for the company who was doing the interviews said, well, you might as well come in early. So the two of us went up there and sat down and talked business, as you do in an interview, and put me on the spot in as many ways as he possibly could. And I was beginning to feel quite comfortable with him because he wasn't an arrogant interviewer at all. He was actually a very interesting bloke in his own right, although hardly spent any time talking about himself. But then after we'd been talking for about 40 minutes, he said, do you know, I'm dying for a smoke. Would you mind if I did? And I said, well, no, not at all, so long as I can, because in those days I smoked. So he got out his embassies, I got out my rollies. And I sat there, rolled a cigarette in front of him, and he said, do you know, I've always wanted to learn how to roll a cigarette, and I've never managed it. My fingers seem to be all over the place. Would you show me? So I spent the next quarter of an hour just showing him and teaching him how to roll cigarettes. And at the end of it, we carried on talking a bit more business, and then the next day I had a phone call from him saying, I've sent you a letter, you've got the job. I reckon anyone who can teach me how to roll cigarettes can teach anybody anything, and that's an important part of the job. You've got it.
Okay.
I mean, what a bizarre... Anyway, so that was how the new career started, and I spent the next years doing that and slowly working my way through up the scale. And training to be an area manager, and that was the next big promotion. And I knew I was pretty close to it. But I started to think about how life was going to change when I had that promotion. And I realised that actually I was working stupid hours. I was earning enough money, but not any time with friends and family and doing things that I wanted to do and all of the things that I valued in life.
Absolutely.
And it really made me analyse where I was in life and what I was doing. And I suddenly realised that actually I didn't like what I was doing. And went to the pub and I was sitting there having a few beers thinking about life. And it slowly dawned on me that actually I was in a really unique position for somebody in their early 40s. I didn't owe anybody any money. My family were all well. I'd got no children and no pets, no responsibilities. And if I sold everything I'd got, I could do something completely different. Well, how unique was that? And I couldn't stay in the job if I realised I didn't like it because, well, that wasn't fair to anybody, was it? The company, the people I was working with, or me.
No point in hanging on.
No, exactly. So the next stage was, well, have another beer. It's a great grey cell loosener, isn't it? And over that beer, I thought, no, stuff it. You're in this unique opportunity situation. You've got to do something. What are you going to do? By the end of the beer, I decided, I know, I'll ride a motorcycle through Africa. Of course, the only problem was I didn't have a motorcycle licence. And
I was going to say,
a clue how to ride one.
At this stage, you didn't have a licence, did you?
No, not at all.
Why a motorbike?
I'd looked at all of the different ways that I travelled and thought about the things that I didn't like about them.
Right.
carrying a rucksack, that's all well and good, but it's carrying a rucksack. It's humping it on and off buses and all of those sorts of things. And I'd done that on several different trips. And yeah, okay, there must be a different way that I don't have to carry my own luggage.
Mm-hmm.
I'd sailed a bit, but I really like people and I like spending time around people. And except when you're in harbour, of course, you don't see very many other people. So that was a downside from that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd cycled a couple of longer trips and spend 12 days riding into a headwind with a bicycle, and you begin to doubt the logic of doing it. And I thought, well, okay, been there and done that. I loved it, but so anyway, I went through all of the different ways that I travelled and looked at the disadvantages, and then started to think, well, there must be a way to take all of the things that I love about those forms of travel, but get rid of the disadvantages. And I thought, hell, a motorcycle. What a great way to travel. This has got to be. And with a bike, I've got huge freedom. I can stop where I want to. I can wake up in the morning and I can say, where shall I go today? And not have a clue what was going to happen. And what a fantastic feeling that is. I love it. And not being tied to bus or train timetables and, all of those sorts of things. And, one of the things used to frustrate me about backpacking was that you'd buy your bus ticket or your train ticket, and of course that was always a significant chunk of your budget. And then that night, you meet somebody really interesting. So then you're in this toss-up situation. Do I waste the money that I've spent on this bus ticket and get to know more about this person? Or do I ignore the person and hope that I meet somebody else interesting further down the line that's, as likely to be interesting? Well, of course, with a bike, stuff it. I'll stay an extra few days.
Absolutely.
And that was just how it rolled. And for once, I'd been reasonably perceptive with a decision.
So, when you decided to go on an adventure, the question that's rattling around in my head, why Africa? Of all the countries that you could have gone to, why Africa?
Can I be really flip here and say,
yeah,
the old cliched saying, it seemed like a great idea at the time?
Because when I read into the sort of the start of it all, your mindset was going, I could get killed, I could get raped, and we'll come on to that in a minute. My bike could get stolen, and in fact, as you crossed from one port and went to cross into Africa, there was an incident that may well have brought that true as well. But you'd had all of these thoughts prior to going. Surely a sane man would have gone, nah. But you went, yeah.
Well, we were talking earlier about positive optimists, and I guess I kind of am. I've travelled enough to know that even when things are going badly wrong, something brilliant is about to happen as a direct result, so long as you are positive while you're in the middle of the disaster. And disasters, well, yeah, you fear them. But is it fear or is it respect? And I decided that I wouldn't fear Africa, but I would respect all of the things that it could throw at me, and trust that I had enough common sense to be able to deal with those things as they happened.
Interesting.
Of course, I didn't take into account the fact that I'm a complete disaster magnet and stuff happens to me all the time. But the truth of the matter is, as I was riding across Europe, feeling like a motorcycle accessory rather than the person that was supposed to be in charge of the bike, I was just hanging on the back of this thing and it was telling me what to do. As I was getting towards the Greek port of Piraeus, which is where the ferry went to Egypt, I actually was scared. I knew that I was out of my depth. I was doing something that I didn't have enough experience to do, and quite frankly, I think if I hadn't told my mates in the pub that I was going to do this, and they, of course, were all cracked up laughing.
Yeah, you're going to do what? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. If I hadn't told them that I was going to do this, then I might have chickened out. I might. I don't know. I didn't actually get to the stage where I really seriously considered it. But because, well, you know what it's like when you're on a journey. There's just so much stuff happening, and you're so busy dealing with those moments. Yeah. You do have the opportunity, the ability to push the fearful things to the back of your mind and just get on with it. And things happen at a rate of knots, don't they? And that helped hugely.
I think,
of course,
if
I'd known what was going to happen.
Sorry, if you'd known,
If I'd known what was going to happen, perhaps I might have had a serious rethink.
Well, I think that's all part of the adventure, isn't it? But one of the aspects that I feel, as you mentioned there, about the fears and the unknowns and everything, because you're riding a motorbike, you've got to think about riding the motorbike so those fears disappear. It's before you get on and after you get off that those areas of doubt start to play their little games again. But whilst you're on it, if you're not concentrated on that, it could have an incident as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I was such a novice motorcyclist, I was concentrating very, very hard. In the early months, a lot of my energy went into just not falling off the bike and not doing something really stupid to it, which would damage it irreparably. And I'll remember one day, and I made it. Where was I? Oh, it was in Ethiopia, so third country down the line. And the only place that I could find to stay was a hotel that was actually mud huts in a courtyard. And to get the bike to safety, you could put it actually inside your mud hut. But there was a 6-inch wooden step, sort of a crossbar running across the bottom of the doorway.
Okay.
So part of the door frame. And I had to get the bike over this. And, I got the front wheel over, no problem at all. But as I was trying to get the back wheel over this step, I could smell something burning horribly. And I had no idea what it was. Of course, later on I realised that I was slipping the clutch so madly. Of course, it was that was stinking the hell out of the place. But I did get it over, and fortunately I didn't do any major damage.
I've got to come on to something now that we're out in the mud hut. You'd had this accident, you'd been arrested, and you were taken to jail. That in itself must have been a fear factor. And then you were thrown in this dark room. Can you explain how you felt? Not so much about the arrest or anything, but you were put into this dark room, and you know the bit that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What did you feel when you were put into there? But also, how did you really feel when this incident started to happen? Especially in a country where I guess you were the only white guy.
This situation is still the scariest moment of my life.
I'm not surprised.
It's in fact, just as we're talking, the hair on my arms is raising from it, even after this amount of time.
Yeah, your voice has changed. You've gone quite even emotional now.
Yeah, it's a very unreal sort of situation. Again, it was one of those things where things were just happening so fast, and you're in a very alien environment, incredibly alien. And I'd just been in the charging room in the police station, and as I was being booked in this room that was just full of shouting men and sort of very abrupt police officers. And a man had been thrown into the room and just thrown onto the floor by one of the police officers. And this guy had blood coming out of his eyes and his ears and his nose, and just completely unconscious. And I was just thinking, this is just this can't be happening to me, but it was.
Yeah.
And I was taken out of the charging room and thrown into a cell. And at that moment, it was a moment of pure disbelief. Fascination, and the sensation that it was all really rather unreal. Do you know, I felt like I'd been put into the set of a really bad B movie.
Okay.
Let me describe the cell that I'd been thrown into.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
It was pitch black except for one small window set up very high on the side of the wall. The window was probably about a foot square, and it was barred, and even somebody 8 foot tall wasn't going to be able to reach up and touch it. So that gives you an idea of the height of this room.
Right.
But pitch black other than that. But as my eyes got used to the darkness, I realised that the cell was full of other men. And I have to tell you, this room stunk. The toilet was a bucket in the corner. So you can imagine, there were 20-odd men in this room. And
right.
Yeah, so I don't need to go into any more graphic detail, but that gives you an idea. It was dark, it was dank, it was smelly, and there were all these other men in there who had been arrested and thrown in this cell, and these men had to be dangerous, and there was me, the visitor, the stranger to this environment. And my first thought was, if I don't act tough, I'm going to be in big trouble here. And do you know, sometimes it amazes me that when you find yourself in a situation where your back is suddenly against the wall, you react instinctively, and sometimes your instincts are things that you never knew you had.
Absolutely.
I'm not a violent person. I like people, and I like adventure, and I like exploring things, but I very rarely ever had to hit somebody. But my instinct in this situation was, if you don't act really tough now and show that you're not somebody that you can be messed with, then you will be in trouble.
Yeah.
And so I grabbed hold of the two guys nearest me and was pushing and shoving and bouncing them off the wall and shouting, and just... I was a fly on the wall, high up on the wall, looking down on me doing this, and just thinking, what? This isn't you, what are you doing? But I knew why I was doing it. But yeah, it was very, very scary. But could we not tell the rest of this story? Because without the whole thing in context, what happened next doesn't have, doesn't stand as the full story, if you're with me.
Yeah, and to read the book, you'll find out exactly what the situation is with that. But we move on. So from an experience like that, you then go and continue your adventure. But the bit that I would like to pick up on now, and to bring this to a bit of a close as well, is you put your bike into some bushes, and you went then on a more of a on-foot expedition to a campsite, where you felt that perhaps when you got back that your bike would be all in bits and everything, but that you had to go and have a look at where you were going to go to. Surely that must have been a bit of a highlight.
Oh, absolutely. When I was released from jail, I met a young lad who was out doing the same thing that I was. He had his knotted handkerchief on the end of a pole, and before he took on man's responsibilities, he was out doing a bit of exploring for himself, and he spoke pretty good English. So the two of us sat and had a natter, and we talked about life and the road, and each other's dreams and all this sort of stuff. And I told him a little bit about what had happened, and he said, you must be feeling pretty bad about my country.
Yeah.
Do you know? I think you should go to my village. I think you'd be very welcome there, and I think maybe this will give you another image of my country. And so he gave me some superb directions. He didn't know what a map was, so his directions were: you must go for half a day's walk down the road this way until you come to 3 large trees on the left-hand side. When you get to those trees, turn left. Then you go for another half day's walk until you get to 3 large hills. And so it went on. And his directions were absolutely superb. Of course, the only thing that stuffed them up was, of course, he was talking walking time and I was on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
But his directions led me off into the middle of the desert. And it got to the stage where the track was very soft sand. Now, anybody who's ridden on sand knows that you need to be able to open the throttle and go against all your instincts, which say slow down, and keep that throttle open and just go for it. But when the track started twisting as much as it did in between the thorn trees and so on, I couldn't keep up enough speed to ride through the sand. So I had a choice: either keep going to the village on foot, park the bike up under a tree and cover it with scrub, and hope that everything was still there when I got back, or turn around and carry on with the journey. But instinct just said, you're so close to the village now, go. And in the end, what's anybody going to do with a bike like mine in the middle of the bush? Well, nobody's going to nick it. They might nick some of the parts from it and so on, but so long as they don't nick anything that makes it go, then that's fine. I can always manage without a mirror or two. And in the end, I wasn't carrying anything that I could do that I couldn't replace.
Good.
So I loaded myself up with some food rations and all the water I had, and set off down the trail. This time, following his directions at his foot pace.
Yeah.
And it didn't take me long to get to the village, and when I did, they were expecting me. I passed a young lad who was herding goats, and he'd seen me and legged it off in the direction of the village.
Oh, okay.
But I spent the next week in the village, and spent the first days sitting with the chief and his men. We didn't have a word of any language in common except for sign language.
Yeah.
And they were telling me the most amazing stories, the tribe's history and hunts that they'd done, and battles with neighbouring tribes. And this was all done with sign language or drawings in the sand when they couldn't get a message across with the sign language.
Fantastic.
And yeah, absolutely fascinating. What just an amazing opportunity, and it was exactly the sort of thing that I was out on this trip to have the chance to experience. And if the jail incident hasn't happened, I may have missed out on this.
Yeah.
Almost certainly would have done.
Everything's for a reason. So you'd gone from the depths of fearing for your life, and not too much later, experiencing pure joy of being accepted into a tribe and them sharing their stories with you.
Absolutely.
One wouldn't have happened without the other.
I never would have had my testicles poked by a chief's wife either if I hadn't been in this village. But for people to know why that came about, they're going to have to read the book.
They're going to have to read the book. And on that point, this is the book that we have been talking about, Into Africa by Sam Manicom. There's a link on the page for you to go through to find where you can buy this, and I suggest that you do. The only problem that you're going to have is when you buy the book, you're then going to be looking online for adventure clothing, wondering where you're going to start. Sam, thank you very much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure yet again, and I very much look forward to meeting you soon.
Kevin, it's great to talk with you, and thanks very much for helping share the word about Into Africa. Much appreciated.
My pleasure, thank you.
Cheers.